For 20 years, Joseph Scott Morgan worked as a forensic death investigator. He also teaches about forensics at Jacksonville State University, and now he's taking his expertise into the world of podcasting. He has a new podcast out. It's called Body Bags. Joseph, thanks so much for joining us. What prompted you to do this podcast?
I felt as though that there's a grand void in the podcast world relative to forensics. And when I had this opportunity presented to me, it's something I'd kind of been toying around with in my mind anyway, because I have been a death investigator and a forensic scientist, but I've spent the better part of 2 decades now as an educator, and I'm a teacher. I mean, that's, and I embrace that fully as a college professor, and I love that. I love being a college professor. And so there's such a diminishment of information and kind of how you kind of drill down into what the facts are, as opposed to, a lot of the drama that surrounds things. Let's talk about the science, because the science is equally compelling and exciting.
I listened to the first episode, and it really takes a deep dive into the forensics. And in that first episode, you talk about the Gabby Petito case and really apply your expertise to explain to the listeners what's going on.
Having been in the morgue and as a medical legal death investigator and spent a lot of time, I actually started out as what's referred to as a diener. And diener is a German word that roughly translated means corpse servant, and it's an old German term that has been used as the word for servant. And so when you think about it, you're learning within the morgue to kind of read what the dead are leaving behind. I know that's horribly cliche, but we always say we speak for those that can no longer speak for themselves. And it's the science, not us speaking, but it's us interpreting the science that's left behind by the dead and the life that was lived. And so I think that that's something that people want to know about. I mean, think about all of the shows out there in media and, all these sorts of things that have people that are portraying forensic scientists. And I wanted to be a person that actually, is degreed in forensic science, that has practiced as a forensic scientist, and that has taught at a university level. And plus, I love telling stories.
Is this something that you've wanted to do for a while, a podcast like this?
Yeah, it is, because I would hear a lot of stuff. And I think it's grand that we have people out there that, let's see, what do they call them? Civilian detectives or whatever they're calling themselves now. And I think that that's fantastic. But, I hear a lot of things, and have been presented with a lot of things that come back into my sphere because of all the media that I do, where they'll say, well, we heard this or we heard that. And, I'd scratch my head and think, that's scientifically, it's not really valid. That's not how this dynamic works, when it comes to interpreting what the dead are attempting to say to us. Mm-hmm. And so, you have to be measured, I think, to a great degree. The Gabby Petito case is a fine example because we don't have any information. I mean, we really don't. I mean, other than the fact, that the most glaring thing is that those forensic scientists, the coroner, the forensic pathologist, they shot out of that door on that Tuesday afternoon, and they proclaimed that the manner of death was specifically a homicide. And, we don't have the cause, but, many times, Anjanette, in many of these cases that we cover, they won't release either a manner or a cause. And they might sometimes say, well, we've got a cause, but we don't know how to frame the manner. That's not what happened here. They came out and said, we've got a manner, and we're going to call it homicide. So knowing what I know about working within the morgue and working as a medical legal death investigator, they saw something. They saw something significant while they were in there, standing over this poor young lady's body, 22 years old.
Well, it's a really interesting podcast, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners will enjoy it too. So Joseph Scott Morgan, thanks for joining us today to talk about Body Bags, and we'll send it back to you in the studio.